This man is trying to put mirrors into space to generate solar power at night. Ben Nowak and Tons of Mirrors is solving solar energy's nighttime problem. This is by THOBEY Campion, and this is his image. Ben Nowak is a 26-year-old inventor and entrepreneur. After a mechanical engineering degree, a raft of gigs, and an appearance on Mythbusters, he's now the CEO of Tons of Mirrors. Tons of Mirrors is using satellite-mounted reflective surfaces to redirect sunlight to earthbound solar panels at night. Nowak did not invent the idea of using space mirrors to alter localized lighting conditions. A Senate subcommittee on energy production and supply proposed a mirror concept in 1977. In 1988, the Russian Znaya project successfully deployed a 65-foot mirror into orbit, sending a 5-kilometer wide roving beam of light traipsing across Europe. In 2017, a Norwegian bookkeeper named Oscar Kittelsen erected large rotable mirrors on a mountain above the town of Rjukan to combat seasonal depression. China's Three Moon Project is building a giant orbiting reflector to replace streetlights. The University of Glasgow, Scotland, is also developing an orbital solar reflector concept called Soul Space. Nowak is coming at the challenge from a different angle, though, with refreshed technology and claim to make sunlight at least 90.7 times cheaper than previous proposals. Motherboard, what's your backstory? Ben Nowak says, I've always been a builder and a maker. I built a fusion reactor in high school. I built an underwater ROV when I was 14. I worked with Peter Brown from the Science Channel when I was a sophomore. We built these cameras that would live stream video from underwater. He flew me to Hawaii to install them with a local tribe. We were also putting tags on sea turtles and beaming the information up to a radio network. That got me a job at SpaceX as a freshman in college. I was part of a team ensuring the Dragon 2 capsule was safe for astronauts. But even doing the SpaceX work was not really enough. On the weekends, I would stay up late and work on other projects. After that, I worked at a couple of startups. One of them was writing software for a folding bike helmet company that ended up not working out so well. I was working in New York, going to school in Boston, and flying to China every other week. Then I delivered medical products with drones in Rwanda. Then I worked with Zipline making fixed-wing drones. When I was there, I had this idea. I took it to the head of the engineering team. He said, it sucks to lose you, but you should really do this company thing because you got a chance in your life to do it. So what was the initial idea? I had an interesting way to solve the real issue with solar power. It's this unstoppable force. Everybody's installing so many solar panels everywhere. It's really a great candidate to power humanity, but sunlight turns off. It's called nighttime. If you solve that fundamental problem, you'll fix solar everywhere. Where did the idea come from? I was watching a YouTube video called The Problem with Solar Energy in Africa. It was basically saying that you need 3 times as many solar panels in Germany as you do in the Sahara Desert, and you can't get the power from the Sahara to Germany in an easy way. I thought, what if you could beam the sunlight and then reflect it with mirrors and put that light into laser beam vacuum tubes that zigzagged around the curvature of the Earth? It could be this beam that comes in just like power companies, this tube full of infinite light. That was the initial idea, but the approach was completely economically unworkable. I was like, this is not going to compete with the solar in 10 years. I should just completely give up and do something else. Then I was on a run 2 days later, and I thought, if I put that thing that turns sunlight into a beam in orbit, then you don't have to build a vacuum tube anymore. And it's so much more valuable because you can shine sunlight on solar farms that already exist. Then I developed several more technologies which I know for a fact no one else is working on. That made the model even more economical. Are these just like regular household mirrors, but fixed to a satellite? If you did that, the light would go to too many places. The sun is a certain size. It's not a point. It has a distance across. The light from one side of the sun would bounce off your mirror, and the light from the other side would also bounce off your mirror. If you used a perfectly flat mirror, every single microscopic piece would have this angle of diverging light coming from it. By the time the reflection hit Earth, you'd get a 3.6 kilometer diameter spot with this gigantic. There are only 10 solar farms that big. So I did the math and figured out that if I could hit a 500 meter spot instead of 3,600 meters, then I'd be able to hit 44 times more solar sites per orbit. So what's the solve? The only way to do this is with a collimator. If you picture a candle, the light is going to spring out in every possible direction. If you put a mirror on one side of the candle, now it's spreading out more one way than everywhere else. If you put the mirrors all around the candle, you get more light on a single very specific point. It's how parallel the light rays are. A laser is very collimated light. There was one patent for a collimator in orbit filed back in 2005. It was basically a giant reverse telescope that shined light down on Earth. But it would be super expensive to make a telescope that big because it would have to be optically perfect. So I spent 3 months trying to figure out how to make it cheap. Then one day I suggested to somebody that we could maybe tile it. It took me another 2 weeks to figure out how to actually tile it. You lost me with the tiles. The James Webb Space Telescope takes light from a very small star very far away and blows up the image. I'm doing precisely the opposite. It's the same exact mirrors, you just turn it the other way. If you did that with James Webb way, you would want to make something as bright as the sun on the ground with a collimator. The big lens has to be 1.5 kilometers across, which is gigantic. If you want a mirror that's 1.5 kilometers across and have it to be the right shape, which is not flat, it's a parabola. Every part has to be extremely accurate, and it's going to be really big and floppy. If you ever want to rotate it, you're in trouble. Instead of making 1.5 kilometers single parabola, I'm making 1.5 kilometers of several million parabolas. These tiny parabolas are like dimples on a plastic Diet Coke cup. At that size, they hold the shape of a parabola so well, it completely solves a problem, makes it super linearly scalable. What needs to happen to get from concept to application here? It's really just money. I'm trying to raise $5 million to put one of these tiles on the International Space Station right now. I want it up there to make sure this spot size is what we expect it to be and that all the math checks out. The next step is building a bigger satellite that's a proof of profitability that serves legitimate customers on the ground. And the next step after that is to raise even more money and put a bunch more satellites up there and have a real constellation. Once we're at that stage, we'll know how cheap the manufacturer gets, how expensive the setup is, fixed costs, operating costs. Then we'll have a better idea of how this stacks up against fossil fuel plants. Making this cheaper than everything else, that's a challenge. What's the timing here? I'm trying to raise $5 million by October 1st, he said. Anyone told you out of your mind yet? Oh yes, several optical physicists, he says. So you're feeling pretty right on this one? So far, I haven't figured out how to aim this thing as fast as I want to get to yet, because every 2 minutes you have to switch to a new satellite. Okay, so this is on vice.com. I'll leave a link below for you for that. Since he has connections to SpaceX, maybe you should talk directly to Elon Musk. And I'm sure Elon will give him a drop in the bucket of $5 million to do this. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.